I'd like to welcome to the exciting new world of sewing with the Babylock Serger. It's good to know that finally there's a fast and easy way to guarantee professional results in every project we sew. Let me show you some of the Serger garments I've sewn lately. The gem I'm wearing, for instance, is a perfect, even though it's an unlined style. The Serger finish on the face and the hair assures me that their hands-at-home look. And my turtleneck, it looks exactly like ready-made, but it only took about 20 minutes on the overlock. And it took about 5 minutes to add this narrow finish to the coordinating scarf. You know, I added it up, and in these 3 garments, I spent over $75 compared with buying them at my favorite department store. Why, at that rate, the machine was paid for the first month I had it. Of course, I don't sew just for myself. This baby dress is another Serger project. The dress is cute. Wait until you see the matching panties. Can you imagine finishing all those ruffles the old-fashioned way? But with my own lock, it was quick as a breeze. Of course, little girls aren't woe for. You can bet that this little boy's jogging suit, another instant overlock project, is the hit of the playground at kindergarten. When my best friend had her new baby, I didn't have to settle for store-bought present. I did this baby quilt in about an hour, my Serger. My guests never imagined that my circular tablecloth and matching napkins stood their life as a king-size sheet, $5.99 sale table. Compare that with ready-made price, and compare this neat edge finish with the tedious, time-consuming job of his circular tablecloth fashioned way by pressing under and under again. I'll bet you wait to get started serging yourself, so let me show you all the helps you'll need for successful sewing. The machine comes to you with the thread stem lowered. You'll need to put it to its highest position until the thread eyes are centered over the station. These cone supporters allow you to use special cone thread to still get a snug fit on the machine. I prefer to use the polyester thread from Cortis. It's strong, soft, and lint-free, but your machine will work well with any good quality thread. I like these 1,000-yard cones too, since I'm so much sewing lately. The machine will operate equally well with the small thread cones, or even with conventional thread spool. You insert this special adapter into the end of the spool to create a smooth edge of the thread to feed evenly. Maybe you're thinking that an overlock looks hard to thread. Well, surprise! That comes to you with thread already through the thread stations. Simply tie the end of your new spool of thread to the end of that original strand. Place the 2 threads side by side and tie one through loop knot. Those knots will pull easily through the whole threading mechanism of your machine, except the eye of the needle. So let's snip that thread right above the eye of the needle. Now pull the thread. Do you feel that resistance? That's coming from your tension dial. Simply put your fingers on the silver sleeve around the knob and lift outward to release the tension and allow the thread to pull smoothly through the threading path. Now when I step on the foot control, no stitches form. Just 2 single strands of thread under the presser foot. Pull each strand in turn, releasing the appropriate tension mechanism as you pull. Snip away the old threads, and then use these convenient curved tweezers from your accessory kit to rethread the eye of the needle. Be careful to slide all 3 strands of thread under the back of the presser foot. Lower the foot, step on your control, and check to see that a chain is forming. Even the manual threading process is surprisingly simple. The whole machine is color-coded. Each thread station is marked in a particular color, and all the thread guides for that strand of thread are marked to match. Open the side cover and you'll find a color-coded thread diagram. And of course, your instruction manual contains detailed diagrams as well. To open the front cover, Insert your finger into the indentation at lower right and slide the cover to the right before rotating it forward. Now the entire threading path is exposed. Always begin with upper looper thread. That's the center spindle. Your cone rests on the spindle. The thread feeds from the cone up through the eye of the thread and down through the handle. Slide the thread through this thread guide, then this one through the tensions. Give the thread a little extra tug at this point to ensure that it has lodged fully between the tension discs. The next thread guide is right beside the tension, then follow down, down again, over, back up, over, and finally through the eye of the curved upper looper. Next, add the lower loop thread from the right-hand spindle. The thread feeds up through the thread stand, down the handle, through 2 thread guides, and between the tension discs. Be sure to tug the thread firmly between the discs. Then 5 more color-marked thread guides carry the strand of thread to the lower looper. To use the convenient self-threading mechanism, push on the red tab and the left end of the looper drops down into view through the window in the needle plate. This end is a clip shape, and by holding the end of thread with the end in your right hand and the fold in your left hand, it can be snapped in from the top of the clip. Push the looper top gently with your finger until it snaps back into place. Now rotate the hand wheel away from you until the eye of the looper is just visible in the front of the machine, and use the tweezers to thread the eye. Turn the hand wheel again so the looper is visible, and check to see that the thread lies in the groove on the front of the looper and isn't wrapped around it. Thread the needle, the left-hand thread cone, last. The thread goes up through the thread stand, down through the handle, through the thread guide, around the tension between the discs, slides down into the take-up lever, through 1 remaining thread guide, then through the needle from front to back. Be sure all 3 thread strands are under the back of the presser foot. Lower the foot and test for stitching. Now that we have our machine all threaded, let's sit down and sew. With your Babylock, it isn't necessary to lift the presser foot to insert the fabric. Just place the fabric at the tip of the foot and begin to sew. The machine's knife blade trim the edge of the fabric as stitches form. At the end of the seam, simply keep on stitching. The machine won't jam, and there's no need to reach for scissors. Bring the thread chain back under the foot and the knives will cut it off. Your overlock is fully variable stitch width. I like to use the wider stitches, the bigger numbered settings, to give me stronger, more durable seams in woven fabrics. And I like the narrow settings, the smaller numbers, to give me daintier seams in fine knit fabrics like this nightgown. And changing the widths is so easy. Let me remove the presser foot to give you a better view. Of course, you don't have to remove your foot at home to make this change. Notice that as we sew, the stitches form around a metal prong called a stitch finger. We need to clear away those stitches by pulling a bit of slack in the needle thread, then gently tugging on the thread chain until the stitches cleared the fingers. Next, remove the upper knife from its cutting position. Push the knife to the right with your left hand, then twist it clockwise with your right hand until it's in its uppermost position. Now by gently turning the red knob, the stitch fingers move apart to form wider stitches or closer together to form narrower ones. The exact setting can be read from the position of the yellow line in the window of the needle plate. On some models, the stitch width adjustment is manual. If your machine doesn't have the red knob, you can adjust your width this way. Loosen the screws holding the lower knife and slide the knife to the right. Loosen this screw on the needle plate and the black tab can move from side to side. Line up the desired stitch width indication with the edge of the needle plate and tighten the screw. Now you position the lower knife snug against the nail plate and tighten the 2 screws. For more detailed instructions, refer to your operating manual. Remember to turn the knife blade back into cutting position before you begin to sew.
Your stitch length is also variable. Shorter stitches provide greater durability. Longer stitches save thread in areas where durability isn't critical, in overcasting, for instance. Number 3 is at an average stitch length. To change the setting, open the side cover, push on the red dot with your finger while turning the hand wheel away from you. You will feel the red button click in. Keep holding it. Continue to turn the hand wheel. The triangular silver indicator will move along the mirrored black dial to select the desired setting. When the button is released, the machine is ready to stitch again.
The most basic way of using your block is to finish edges on seams, hems, and facings. For finishing edges, guide the fabric through the machine so the knife blade just skims the edge of the fabric, trimming away any ravelly edges. It's easiest to overcast while your pattern piece is still flat, rather than after you've stitched them together. Now let's look at an easy method for turning these outside corners. Overcast the edge right to the corner. Raise your presser foot, pull some slack in your needle thread, and slide your work slightly back behind the presser. Now the stitches are free of the fingers and your fabric can turn. Lower the presser foot and continue stitching in the new direction. Overcasting an inside corner is handled differently. Stitch until the knife blade, not the needle, is in the corner. Stop with the needle in fabric to anchor your work. Raise the presser foot, then maneuver the fabric so that a pleat forms to the left of the foot and the cut is straight ahead. Lower your foot and continue sewing. Presto, a perfect inside corner. Using the overlock stitch to finish a hem has an added bonus. Run your fingers over the tail chain to smooth out the threads. You'll find that one is noticeably shorter. That's your needle thread. Pull that thread and you'll see that it eases the extra fullness to allow your hem to lay flat. Pull that thread even further, you can actually produce gathers. On all knit fabrics and many wovens, your overlock can use to join the seams and finish them all in one operation. Put your 2 pieces of fabric right sides together and put the fabric through the machine, the right hand cut edge lined up with your 5/8 inch marking. As a shortcut, I like to guide from the edge of the red stitch width knot. That's almost exactly 5/8 inch. Isn't this a wonderful way to sew? The machine comes to you, needle tension set quite loose, so that your stitches may spread apart or ladder. To correct, just turn the top tension knob 1 full turn right or clockwise and test the stitching until this is eliminated. This tightened tension setting is right for both seams and finishes on all weights of fabric. For instance, this little velour t-shirt is one of my favorite projects, and see a professional seam the overlock creates for me? And look inside the silky, no ravelies at all. And from the outside, my seams are perfectly pucker-free. Babylock is an absolute lifesaver when it comes to sewing really stretchy knit fabrics. See how this swimwear fabric feeds right through the machine with no distortion at all. Yet the finished seam is every bit as stretchy as the fabric itself. Rib trim neckline finish that you see on my t-shirt is a breeze with a Serger. Just stretch the hem, fit the neckline of your garment. Let the machine trim, seam, and finish all in one. Isn't that easy? It looks just like a t-shirt you buy in the store. It's awfully important to remember not to sew over pins with your overlock. Those knife blades would get dull in a hurry chopping straight pins. Pin if you need to. Just remember to remove each pin as it approaches the presser foot. Or try pins in from the opposite direction, with the toward the body of the fabric and the points out 1/2 inch from the cut edge. Now the pins can feed easily under the presser foot, safely away from the knife blades. Your overlock doesn't have a reverse button like your conventional machine, so let's talk about some ways of securing the end of the seam. In most sewing situations, a seam is soon crossed by another seam. That intersection is automatically self-locking. A drop of liquid ravel preventer makes that intersection even more durable. When a seam won't be crossed, you do need to lock them, and there are two ways of doing that. To lock the beginning of a seam, sew about 4 stitches of fabric. Stop with your needle down to hold it in place. Raise the presser foot. Smooth out your thread chain and bring it forward under the foot. Lower the foot and continue to stitch with the stitches forming over the chain to secure it. To lock the end of a seam, sew until the needle is just off the edge of the foot. Turn the hand away from you to bring the needle up. Raise the presser foot, pull a slack in your needle thread, and gently pull the fabric toward the back to slide the stitches off the stitch finger. Flip that fabric end over end and reposition it under the foot. Sew about an inch, then sew off the edge. Another exciting function of your Babylock is the narrow rolled edge finish. The machine actually trims the edge of fabric, rolls it under, and forms a V-thread finish that substitutes for the old-fashioned turn it under twice and top stitched edge. You'll remember that I used to finish my scarf and my set of and round tablecloth. Just think of all the hours it saved me hemming the ruffles on these little pants. I even like to use it as a substitute for hems and facings in a whole garment, like I did in this silky print top. And set your Babylock for the roll edge is so easy. You don't need any tools. Everything's built right in. Your instruction manual shows you exactly how to do it, and there's a simplified diagram inside the machine's front cover. I'll go through the steps for you. Raise the presser foot. Turn the hand wheel away from you to bring the needle to its highest position. Clear the thread from the stitch fingers by pulling a little slack in the needle thread, gently easing the tail chain to the back. Remove the upper knife from position by pushing it to the right and twisting the knob clockwise to raise the blade. Turn the hand wheel away from you, bring the needle to its lowest position. Notice that in this position the markings on the hand wheel and on the front of the machine line up. Set the stitch width to maximum by turning the rib clockwise as far as it will readily turn, but don't force it. The yellow indicator line should line up with the star in the window of the needle plate. Pull down on the lever to bring the secondary stitch finger out of action. Reset the stitch width setting to the M using the red knob. Replace the upper knife blade and lower the presser foot.
Outside cover and set the stitch length to about number 1. Push in on the red button and turn the hand wheel away from you until the button clicks in. Keep holding it in, and as you continue to turn the hand wheel, the silver triangular indicator will move along a numbered dial to select number 1 length setting.
Can you believe it? That whole conversion process took less than a minute. Now we want to tighten our lower thread tension so that the top thread will actually be pulled all the way around the fabric edge. To do that, just turn your lower right-hand knob, the one that controls the lower looper thread, 6 turns clockwise. Of course, that's a much larger adjustment used to making on a tension dial, but don't worry about it. The tension system on this machine is entirely different from that on your household machine. Now we're ready to just insert the fabric and sew. And just that fast, you can create a beautiful professional finish for all sorts of projects. I find so many places to use the rolled edge in my sewing projects. For instance, the ruffled or lettuce edge on the rib trim of this neckline is formed simply by stretching out the fabric while you're sewing. This white blouse is French hand sewing. done quick and easy on the serger. See how beautifully the rolled edge finishes single thickness collars? And the rolled edge formed as a seam is almost invisible through the sheer fabric. Even the pin tucks are done with the rolled edge, just by stitching over a fold. The narrow rolled edge finish has an even fuller, more satiny appearance when it's stitched with the special stretchy nylon thread because of the thread's loose, crimp nature. Setting the machine back for conventional serging is just as easy, and of course it's in your owner's manual. Raise the needle and the presser foot, clench fingers, and raise the knife blade. Bring the needle to its lowest position, matching the symbols on the hand wheel and the face of the machine. Set the stitch width to the star. Remember not to force the red knob. Push the lever back to its highest position. Select the desired stitch length. Number 3 is right for normal sewing. Lower the knife blade. Lower the presser foot. Close the machine covers, and we're almost ready to sew. All that remains is to reset the tension to its normal balance. Since we tightened this knob 6 turns, let's turn it 6 turns back to the left to loosen. Now test the stitch. It should be just about right, but since our turns right and left may not be exactly equal, some fine-tuning may be necessary. The upper and lower looper threads, the squiggly parts of the stitch, should interlock just over the cut edge of the fabric. If the interlocking point is on the side of the fabric, the lower tension is still too tight and needs to be loosened. Turn it another half turn to the left. If the interlocking point is on top of the fabric, the lower tension setting is too loose and needs to be tightened. Turn it to the right. Practicing with your machine threaded in 3 different colors makes these tension adjustments easy to understand clearly. And if you're having trouble remembering which direction to turn those knobs for tighter and looser, remember the little rhyme, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. You won't forget that, will you? Your Babylock also has the unique ability to sew with just 2 threads. That creates this interesting flat decorative stitching like you see on this little jogging suit. Let me show you how it's done. To convert the machine to sew 2 threads, first snip the upper thread, that's the middle one, right at the eye of the looper. You can remove that strand of thread completely from the machine or just wrap the cut end up between the discs of its tension dial to hold it out of the way. Right above the empty looper is a brass screw. Push in on the brass screw and twist to the left. The screw controls a little wire called the subsidiary looper. Turn it until the tip of the wire fits into the eye of the looper. The upper left corner of the machine is a switch with the numbers 2 and 3. Now it's set at 3 for normal stitching. Move it to the 2. Thread sewing uses different tension settings. The needle thread tension is loosened. Turn the knob 9 or 10 turns to the left. The looper thread tension is also loosened just a little, 1 or 2 turns to the left. To help you with these tension settings, notice the red and blue markings on the silver band around the tension dials. Blue markings are 3-thread sewing, red markings are for 2-thread work. Turn the knobs until the edge of the knob itself lines up within the red-colored area. Now sew a test stitch. The loops should interlock loosely over the cut edge of the fabric, like this. If the loops are pulling to the underside of the fabric, loosen the needle tension. If the loops are pulling to the top of the fabric, tighten the needle tension and loosen the lower looper tension just slightly. To do that decorative 2-thread or flat lock seaming, you want your 2 layers of fabric wrong sides together, right sides out, just the opposite of what you're used to in sewing. Then you stitch your seam, allowing the knife blades to trim away the seam allowances as usual. Then just pull gently crosswise on your stitching to flatten out the seam and give you the decorative look on the outside of your garment. Now, two-thread stitching can be done on any width setting, any length setting, but to give brightest, most vivid look, you'll probably want to use your maximum width. You can get an even more decorative look to your stitching by using a heavier specialty thread, like a hull twist, even a crochet thread or a fine yarn in your lower looper when you stitch this two-thread seaming. Surprisingly, you can add rows of this flat lock stitching anywhere in the garment, whether there's a seam or not. You just cheat. Fold your fabric right side out, wrong sides together. Flip the knife blade up out of work so you don't risk cutting that fold,
And then stitch with the fold of the fabric lined up with the edge of the needle plate.
pull crosswise on the stitches to flatten, and there's your flat lock tuck, any place you want it. This two-thread stitching has wonderful advantages in working with specialty fabrics. For instance, this lingerie set uses two-thread stitching to give me perfectly flat seams, so I don't have to worry about any ridges showing through my outside garments, and my elastic applications look just like ready to wear. Heavier fabrics like fun furs or heavy sweater knits are sewn to great advantage with that two-thread because the flattened seams in these fabrics keep the seam areas soft and supple, free of bulk. The two-thread stitch can also make a blind hem that fits the edge of the fabric while it's hemming, and it's completely stretchable for all your knit fabrics. This special presser foot, an optional extra accessory for your machine, guides the fabric perfectly straight so you'll get perfect results every time. Remove the original presser foot by loosening the screw. Use the lift lever to raise the presser bar extra high and the foot will slip right out. Position the special foot on the presser bar and tighten the screw. Turn under your garment hem just the way you normally would. Then fold that double thickness hem back out to the right side. This is exactly the same fold that you use for the blind hem on your conventional machine. Place the fabric under the foot so the fold lies right next to the guide blade underneath the foot, and the knife trims away that excess ledge. The needle just catches the fabric fold, and when you pull the stitches to flatten, the hem is secured and the edge is beautifully overcast. The blind hem can use any stitch width and length settings, but wider stitches are more durable for woven fabrics. Now let's reset the machine for regular three-thread sewing.
Bring the needle to its lowest point. Push in on the brass screw and turn it clockwise to bring the subsidiary looper back to its original up position.
Bring the upper looper thread once again through the thread guides, through the eye of the looper, and underneath the back of the presser foot. Move the thread guide switch from 2 back up to 3. Tighten the needle tension knob 10 turns to the right, and tighten the lower tension 1 or 2 turns to the right. Now sew a test sample to check your tension settings. Remember that the loops should interlock right over the edge of the fabric. If any fine-tuning is required, just refer back to the rolled edge section earlier in this tape. Now that we've talked about so many exciting things to make with your new overlock, let's talk for just a minute about how to take care of it to keep it in really top condition. Because of the cutting action, of course, lint builds up rather quickly around your knife blades. You can remove it easily with the lint brush that comes in your accessory kit, or I like to use just a spray of Lint Be Gone, an aerosol propellant cleaner. You'll need to oil your machine about every 8 to 10 hours of actual running time, or every 90 days. Put 10 to 15 drops of clear sewing machine oil into the large hole on the top of your machine. Below that hole is a little oil reservoir that feeds oil to a system of wicks through the major parts of your machine.
Your overlock is designed to use a true industrial quality needle called a DCX1. This special needle lets you sew all fabric types without changing needles. It also ensures top stitch quality, and it lasts longer than a conventional household needle. To change a needle when it eventually becomes dull, snip the needle thread and hold the needle with your special tweezers while you loosen the needle clamp screw. Before inserting the replacement needle, let's identify its front and back sides. You can recognize the back side of the needle by the hollow or scarf cut out just above the eye. The front is defined by the long lengthwise groove. To insert the new needle, hold it with the tweezers or your fingers, slide the tip down into the hole of the needle plate, then slip the upper end all the way up inside the needle bar hole. Tighten the screw firmly and you're ready to rethread and continue sewing. Your cutting blades are designed for a long life, but of course eventually you will notice that the machine isn't cutting cleanly and it's time for a replacement. You'll find a spare blade in your accessory box, and the replacement process is so easy you can do it at home. Open the front cover of your machine and rotate the top knife blade out of position. Near the top of the lower blade is a little black clamp. Loosen that screw and the blade can be removed by sliding it downward. Insert the new blade into the holder from below. Fit the tip of the blade into the groove and line it up flush with the top of the needle plate. Position the black clamp horizontally and tighten the screw. Return the upper knife to cutting position and the job is finished. I'd like to tell you about just a couple of accessory items that make my sewing area even more convenient. You've probably already noticed this wonderful sewing table that holds both my serger and my household machine, so I can swivel easily from one to the other and even all the way around to the convenient attached pressing surface. You haven't been able to see this because it's been on the floor, but it's called a pedal stay, and it holds my foot control securely in position so I don't have to chase it across the floor. I hope you're all inspired now to get busy sewing and to enjoy your Babylock every bit as much as I enjoy mine. I'm sure everybody in your family will be so proud of all the wonderful things you can sew for them now that you own a Serger. If you should run into any questions about using your machine, remember that your local dealer is especially trained to help you. Or feel free to write to me, Nancy Nix, care of Babylock, USA, Post Office Box 2634, St. Louis, Missouri.